Hey there, Covenant family. This morning, a Covenant gathering is meeting on the border between Penetang and Tiny Township in order to walk together along the eastern end of the Tiny Trail. The language of a trail or a path is something that Jesus used to describe himself. Most of us have probably heard the word he used translated as the way, as in, I am the way, the truth, and the life. The word he uses there could be used for the way, or a path, or a road, or even a trail. We'll get back to thinking about that after a song. The song is about walking in the way of Jesus, following Jesus. The chorus is one that many of you are probably familiar with. It's been sung in churches for the last 30 years. The verses, they aren't quite as singable or familiar, so I invite you to listen to them and reflect on the lyrics and then join in singing on the chorus if you are so inclined. Sometimes the night is beautiful. Sometimes the sky was so far away. Sometimes it seemed to stoop so close. You could touch him, but your heart would break. Sometimes the morning came too soon. Sometimes the day could be so hard. There was so much work left to do, but so much you'd already done. Oh God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. Oh God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you, and I will seek you in the morning, and I will learn to walk in your ways, and step by step you'll lead me, and I will follow you all of my days. Sometimes I think of Abraham. One star he saw had been lit for me. He was a stranger in this land, and I am that no less than he. And on this road to righteousness, sometimes the climbs can be so steep. I may falter in my steps and never beyond your reach. Oh God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. Oh God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you, and I will see you in the morning, and I will learn to walk in your ways, and step by step you'll lead me, and I will follow you all of my days, and I will follow you all of my days, and I will follow you all of my days, and step by step you'll lead me, and I will follow you all of my days. A fairly common expression among Christians is the expression following Jesus. And for Jesus' first disciples, those who ate with him and listened to him, the idea of following Jesus had a pretty clear and obvious meaning. It literally meant following, walking where he walked, learning his turns of phrase, and likely even some of his mannerisms. But when we're talking about following someone who is no longer physically with us, what does following mean? One option is that we would obey Jesus. He did, after all, tell his first disciples to teach subsequent disciples to obey everything that he commanded. But much of Jesus' teaching is done in the form of story, not in what we think of as commands. And most of Jesus' life is presented in narrative form, not in kind of the lecture lesson format that we've gotten most accustomed to when it comes to ethical teaching. Most preachers and teachers among us, myself included, have been trained to extrapolate what we call application from the life and words of Jesus and from Scripture and from even his first disciples. And then we present this application as obeying Jesus. But if we're completely honest, this is obeying one person or one tradition's attempt to show the way of Jesus. It might be aligned with the Jesus path, but maybe it isn't. It certainly isn't obeying Jesus in the way that would most clearly and obviously be understood, and that is like that we would actually do exactly what Jesus said. Another option would be try to fully and completely emulate Jesus, to follow Jesus as in like copy everything about Jesus, to try to live as he did, to talk as he did, to dress as he did. Often done with the language of obedience, there are those who claim to be attempting to do this. They say they're living biblically, even though they're in a very different world than anyone in the Bible, Jesus included. There was a book that came out some time ago called The Year of Living Biblically, and in it, the author A.J. Jacobs really demonstrated the absurdity of trying to fully emulate a life that's laid out in the Bible. In that book, he sought to dress and eat and act in line with biblical expectations for people, and it had laughable consequences. Despite the impossibility of fully emulating Jesus, I've still seen books in Christian bookstores that push this idea. There are parenting books that try to get people to parent using ancient Near Eastern standards. There are relationship books based on ancient Near Eastern familial structures that don't seem to acknowledge the gap between now and then. There are even at least 2 books exhorting Christians to eat like Jesus. One is called The Jesus Diet, and the other is called What Would Jesus Eat? But what if following Jesus is less about strict obedience or attempted emulation without really truly accounting for the gap in time and culture and place between then and now, and more about learning a way of wisdom? Wisdom is about having enough knowledge to serve as a guide for discernment throughout various circumstances. It may, as it does with children, start with emulation, copying what we observe. It will inevitably progress to obedience, complying with what we're told. But if it only progresses to one or even both of those things, we'll eventually get stuck. We won't be able to live any life beyond what others have lived and experienced. It seems that maybe the Jesus way is more about embracing the life Jesus offers and learning to live out of that life in our time and place in a way that aligns with the Spirit of Christ. And I would add, in a way that is empowered by the Spirit of Christ. An example of how to do this was laid out in a book I recently read called A Path Called Compelling. Again, the idea of a path. This book, written by Bradley Watson, who was a friend of mine from years past, it uses the birth of Jesus, the baptism of Jesus, and the temptation of Jesus to paint a compelling picture of how to live the way of Jesus in our world. He talks about Jesus being present in a specific time and place in history, both genealogically and physically. And we should be present in our time and place in the same way. He talks about the affirmation of Jesus as a beloved child of God, this message that Jesus heard at his baptism, and suggests that this affirmation is paradigmatic for how we should understand God's view and affirmation of us, and invites us into this freedom, knowing that we have affirmation from God as his beloved child. Then he talks about Jesus' temptation, where Jesus rejects the temptation to compete and prove himself. He rejects the temptation to pursue the spotlight and stand out, and he rejects the temptation to pursue power and control. Rather, Jesus, coming from that place, rested in divine love and affirmation. He serves the weak and marginalized with humility. He lays down power for the sake of the world, all the way to the cross. In this, Brad lays out the way of Jesus as a compelling way of walking in wisdom, rather than a checklist of obedience or rote emulation. The tiny trail we're walking on today largely follows the route of an abandoned railway. But even a short venture onto the trail demonstrates that there is no way that the trail that we are walking on is the original railway trail. The hills that we'll be walking, going up and down, would have been impossible to navigate with a railway as they are. And the bridges that were used to go across the gaps where there's now hills on the trail, well, those would have been incredibly expensive to maintain for walking purposes. Rather, the trail has been adapted and changed for the present day and contemporary purposes. It traverses the same land to get to the same ultimate place, but to do it in the exact same way as the original architects had planned for a railway would have proven fruitless. Rather, the original trail was observed, noted, and wisdom led to changes that have allowed this trail, this path, this way to thrive today. And just as an addition in thought, the fact that there are a lot of hills on the trail and ups and downs also helps us think about the way that we are living out the way of Jesus today. It's not all easy or flat or all up or all down. It's a mix of all of those things. As we follow Jesus, as we walk in his way, may we pay attention to his life and teaching and to that of his first followers and even those who came before he did on their journey with God. And through that, may we be open to truly growing in wisdom so that we can live faithfully in line with his way in our time and in our place. As you go this week, walking this journey, walking this Jesus way, may he give you strength. May you know the closeness and presence of his Spirit. And may he give you his peace. God bless. Go in peace.